So let's transition a little bit into your, what were the musical things that sort of called to you, and how did you apply them into your own music?
Yeah, well, I tell the story of hearing Emerson, Lake and Palmer and the Tarkus album. That was a big, big deal to me. It was the power of the keyboards. I knew the chords, the kind of chords. It wasn't that unfamiliar. He was using a lot of suspended chords, meaning that instead of like a major chord, he would actually have the perfect fourth, and so it would sound like this.
That's Emerson, yep.
Yeah. It's a sound. And if you do it with, like an organ type of approach, you even hear more
with a Hammond,
of
right?
that. Like a Hammond kind of a sound. You get more of that that feel.
Yes. Screams Emerson.
Yeah, but if you played major chords like a,
no,
not so much.
Some other band.
But these chords.
So that resonated with you?
Not only these chords, but also the power. I just felt like, wow, this is so cool. So it was one of the incentives, the inspiration to go out and start to buy like some of these keyboards other than just a piano.
You talked about also Tony Banks was an influence.
Yeah, very much so. So I listened to a lot of Genesis, and the thing that really struck me about Genesis was the way that the chords actually were composed, the whole harmonic sense. They would do a lot of things with constant bass notes, so like almost like a droning bass note. So let's say you got like this sound. So they would keep the bass alone, right? And then the chords. You're like immediate like Genesis mode. Once you start like keeping the one bass note. So even if I change, then
that's it. Harkens back to the day when you're listening to FM radio and you hear that, you go, that's Genesis.
Yeah.
You just know it, right?
And for me, like I was never that much into like learning the definite song of a group. I was more interested in what makes that style tick. What is it that, is that Genesis sound? So if I'm like in a composing environment with my group, and we're all of a sudden, we're on this chord, and John Petrucci looks at me and says, "Jordan, give me like some of that Genesis energy." I know what to call on. So I can go like. That's it. I know the tool. I have the harmonic tools to do a lot of that, or even like more basic things. Like, we were in a mode where we were looking at Coldplay for a while, or Muse, and a lot of music does this. But we were especially struck by like Coldplay because their music is very smooth and really nice. So like, what is that? What makes that sound? So I think that a lot of it has to do with finding like a repetitive pattern, like maybe something like. Then, maybe trying to keep it as much in common, like these common tones, or even let's do another one. Then. Whatever. It's these tools that kind of help me go, okay, I can do a little bit of this, I can play. Because, we're all kind of programmed by all the music that we've heard.
Yes.
And nobody lives in like a closet where they haven't heard things that have happened before. So for me as a composer, as a musician, I try to absorb as many things as I can and use them in my toolkit. So if I'm playing along, I can be, in let's call it the Coldplay mode. And then all of a sudden I can shift, Genesis territory, and then
there you go. great about
I'm
what
in
you can
ELP.
do.
Yep.
What's great about what you do is you understand the modes so well. You can transition into them very smoothly.
I'm trying.
No, I think
It's a life.
it's a
work.
lifetime.
It's life's work.
Well, I'll tell you, it's very effective, and I'm glad you talked about how within Dream Theater, how that worked when you started writing together.
Yeah,
You
totally.
go, yeah, I want this feel, and you just call it up.
Yeah,
Because you understand
yeah.
this. I'll call it the science behind.
I try to learn, and I have a good ear. So even if it's something I don't know, I'll go back and I'll listen to it, and I'll say, "What is it? What's making that sound? What is it about that?"
That's cool. That's very cool.
Yeah.
That was all just wonderful. So I understand Gentle Giant is also a method or a sound bank that you also tap into.
It really is, and I love Gentle Giant. I used to follow them around. Believe it or not, it was one of the few groups that I would kind of like, where are they playing? I want to go see them. What I loved about them is their sense of counterpoint. It was really amazing. Like there just weren't groups like that. I mean, you had a lot of great prog groups. You had Yes and Jethro Tull and King Crimson and Genesis and Pink Floyd, da da da. But Gentle Giant had this thing, and it really hit me because I was really into Bach as well. Bach was all about counterpoint and different lines moving, and I've always enjoyed the focus of Bach. Well, with Gentle Giant, I kind of felt that as well. So it was interesting to me because I could kind of like enjoy the rhythmical factor that was more like kind of leaning towards rock, but also very progressive because there was a lot of odd meter type of stuff.
Yep.
So I would sit and practice kind of like improvising in a Gentle Giant style, It's got that Gentle Giant kind of
Yes.
flavor to it.
Do you also get influenced by you made a sound change there, so the sound also gets into that?
Oh, absolutely. That's a really good question. So, yeah, the sound does. I mean, I could play the Gentle Giant style with a different sound, certainly, but Gentle Giant used a lot of the clavy thing, and the clav type of sound is very much like the harpsichord.
Yep.
Right? So it kind of leads you into that almost classical, but
yes.
with a little extra, edge or more modern kind of a feel.
So I got a question for you. This is something I'm dying to hear your opinion on, because I don't think I've asked somebody who's at your caliber of a player this. So you've played all the classics and Bach, Mozart, all that stuff. Can you envision what kind of musicians they were, how good they were by the music they've written?
That's a great question, and it's funny because since they're not here and now, and you can't go see them play, you only have this body of work. You can kind of partly imagine how amazing they were, but also you're relying on the music to kind of tell you the story, like the stuff they left behind. And, for these master composers, the stuff they left behind is amazing. So you have to think that these are, incredible musicians. It would be amazing to sit in a room with Mozart and see just, what he really could do.
Do you think they were... Well, I imagine you're capable of writing stuff you really can't play. Do you think they thought that way, or do you think they actually played everything that they wrote?
I'm sure that they could think things that you couldn't play, because they were also aware of the limitations of what the hands could do. If you're playing on a keyboard, you have 10 fingers. So,
well, it's an obvious limitation.
Yeah.
I meant speed, or maybe complex time signatures or something on that. They go, okay, yeah, I'd love to see somebody else do this.
Probably. I think that they were, it was a long time ago, so they were putting out challenges to people that were kind of making people go, wow, I never saw that before. They were breaking down, barriers. It was cutting edge, right? I mean, things, started out and they weren't even like, conscious of certain intervals, They were many hundreds of years ago, music more was around the perfect fifth and the perfect fourth. And then one day somebody said, oh, what about... and then Mozart came along and he's more free.
Yes.
And then Beethoven said, well, what about sonorities that are more... And nobody had ever thought of, and this is not Beethoven or Mozart, I'm just making up stuff in their style, but, Mozart would have never hit a big chord like, wasn't really his thing. He was more in the...
Yes.
So, but then, you know, comes along a Debussy or something like that where he's more, you know, all of a sudden the tonal world is opening up more, and that wasn't something that I think ever came into like a Mozart or a Beethoven's mind. It just didn't happen. It wasn't part of their awareness.
We've seen this over the years, right? Rock and roll didn't start till the 50s. Nobody done that before that. And every type of music that changes.
And a lot of times it has to do with the sound of the instrument that brings you to a point. Like maybe it's possible that, you know, Mozart was sitting there and he was playing a sound that might have been more like I don't know. Let's look at something and see what we can come up with. I'm just looking for even like a harpsichord sound. Oh, here we go. All right, so Mozart might have been playing, you know.
Yes.
So if he was playing that, I mean, if he's going to play like,
Doesn't work. You wouldn't go there.
no, you definitely wouldn't go there. But for the people who had like a really nice piano around, okay. So a lot of it has to do with the sonority of the instrument.
Yes.
Right.
Your example just struck me right away with the guitar. The electric guitar is what brought some of the music around.
Right. All of a
Without
sudden,
it,
the tones allowed you to do something that wasn't really possible before.
same thing with your shred.
Right.
Who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah.